The Golden State Killer. A name that sent shivers down the spines of Californians for over a decade. He was a phantom, a whisper in the night, a nightmare you couldn't wake up from. His crimes, as brutal as they were baffling, began in the quiet suburbs under the cover of darkness. Homes were broken into, families terrorized, lives changed forever. He was a master manipulator, a hunter stalking his prey. His crimes, a chilling blend of sexual assault and homicide, left communities living in fear. No one knew who he was, where he would strike next, or who his next victim would be. The unknown is often what scares us the most, and the Golden State Killer thrived on that fear, becoming a terrifying enigma that haunted the Golden State. Imagine living in California in the 1970s and 80s. You lock your doors at night, but the fear lingers. Every creak and rustle sends a jolt of fear. Was that the wind, or could it be him? The Golden State Killer terrorized communities up and down the state. From Sacramento to Southern California, no one felt safe. The randomness of his attacks intensified the terror. If he could strike anywhere, who was to say they wouldn't be next? The fear was palpable, a suffocating blanket of anxiety. Families slept with guns under their pillows and installed new locks. The Golden State Killer had stolen their sense of security. His reign of terror began in the mid-1970s. The East Area Rapist terrorized Sacramento. He stalked and broke into homes, binding and threatening his victims. As the body count rose, urgency to catch him grew. The Golden State Killer always seemed one step ahead, moving city to city, leaving few clues. Decades passed, and the case went cold. But the fear he instilled never faded. His reign left an indelible mark on California's history. Section 4. Unmasking the modus operandi. The Golden State Killer's modus operandi was calculated and terrifying. He entered homes through unlocked windows or doors, a chilling reminder of our vulnerability. He brought a rape kit, showing premeditation. His victims, often couples, were bound and terrorized. This highlighted the sadistic pleasure he derived from their fear. His crimes were meticulously planned acts of terror, leaving victims scarred. Section 5. Decades in the dark. For decades, the Golden State Killer's identity remained a mystery. Despite the best efforts of law enforcement, he remained an elusive phantom. The case went cold, but the victims and their families never gave up hope that one day their tormentor would be brought to justice. The lack of technology, particularly DNA testing, in the 1970s and 80s, hindered the investigation. Police collected evidence, but it would be years before DNA technology advanced enough to provide the breakthrough they so desperately needed. The case of the Golden State Killer became a haunting reminder of the limitations of law enforcement and the agonizing wait for justice that many victims and their families endure. Section 6. DNA, the silent witness speaks. In a time when hope was dwindling, a new era of forensic science emerged. DNA technology, once a futuristic concept, became a reality. Investigators, armed with this groundbreaking tool, revisited cold cases, hoping for a miracle. In the case of the Golden State Killer, that miracle came in the form of a familial DNA match. Investigators uploaded the killer's DNA profile to a public genealogy database, GEDmatch. To their astonishment, they found a partial match to a distant relative of Joseph James DeAngelo, a former police officer. The breakthrough sent shockwaves through law enforcement and reignited hope for the victims and their families. Could this be the break they had been waiting for? Could this finally bring them closure? Section 7. Justice at last. After years of meticulous investigation and the tireless efforts of dedicated detectives, the puzzle pieces finally fell into place. Joseph James DeAngelo, the man whose DNA had been linked to the crimes, was living a seemingly normal life in Citrus Heights, California. He was a husband, a father, a grandfather. And yet, beneath this veneer of normalcy lurked a monster. In 2018, authorities arrested DeAngelo. The news of his capture sent shockwaves across the nation. The elusive Golden State Killer, The boogeyman who had haunted California for decades had a name and a face. While his capture couldn't erase the pain and trauma he inflicted, it brought a sense of relief and closure to the victims and their families.